Christmas in a small town is supposed to feel safe. Warm lights in the windows, snow on the ground, familiar faces everywhere you look. But when the streets go quiet and the decorations stay lit long after midnight, some towns reveal a very different side of the holiday. Tonight on Dark Hours, we're telling 4 small-town Christmas horror stories. True and unsettling tales where the season of cheer took a terrifying turn, and holiday nights became something no one wanted to remember. If you're new here, subscribe to Dark Hours for true horror and real stories meant to be heard after dark, even during the holidays. And let me know in the comments, are you watching from a small town or a big city this Christmas season? Now dim the lights, and let's begin. My name is Marcus Webb, and I used to believe that Christmas carols were harmless. I moved to Shepherd's Hollow 3 days before Thanksgiving, taking a teaching position at the elementary school after my divorce left me looking for anywhere that wasn't Philadelphia. The town was perfect in that suffocating small-town way. Population 847, one main street, houses that looked like they'd been painted from the same catalog. Everyone knew everyone, everyone smiled, and everyone, I would learn, sang. The first thing I noticed was the music, not piped through speakers or coming from radios, but actual human voices rising from porches and yards and open windows, even in late November. Old carols, the ones my grandmother used to hum. God rest you merry gentlemen. O come, Emmanuel. But they never seemed to finish. The melodies would start, build to a certain point, then stop abruptly, leaving the air hanging with expectation. We're practicing, my neighbor Mrs. Holbrook told me when I asked. She was 70-something, with the kind of cheerful wrinkles that come from decades of forced smiling. For the Christmas Eve vigil, it's our town's oldest tradition. Sounds lovely, I said, because that's what you say. Oh, it is, it truly is. Her smile didn't reach her eyes. You'll participate, of course. Everyone participates. I laughed it off. I wasn't much for town traditions or forced community spirit. I'd come to Shepherd's Hollow to disappear, not to join hands and sing. But the singing continued. Every evening at exactly 6 p.m., voices would rise throughout the town. Different carols, different houses, but always the same truncated endings. Always that sense of incompletion hanging in the cold air like visible breath. My students sang too. 8- and 9-year-olds who should have been rowdy and distracted hummed under their breaths during lessons. I'd catch them staring out the windows, lips moving silently, and when I'd call their names, they'd snap back with guilty expressions. Are you okay, Emma? I asked one girl who'd been particularly distant. Yes, Mr. Webb. She clutched her pencil tighter. I'm just thinking about my part. Your part? For Christmas Eve. We all have parts. She looked at me with those 2 serious eyes that children in small towns sometimes develop. Don't you know yours yet? I didn't, and I didn't care to. December arrived with heavy snow, the kind that muffled everything, turned the world into a snow globe someone had shaken and forgotten about. The singing grew more frequent. Morning and evening now, sometimes in the middle of the night. I'd wake at 2 a.m. to hear Silent Night drifting through my window, multiple voices harmonizing in the darkness. I started losing sleep. The truncated melodies wormed into my brain, creating an itch I couldn't scratch. I'd find myself humming them without realizing, then stopping at the same arbitrary points everyone else did. It felt wrong. Incomplete. Like a sentence missing its final word. Why don't you finish the songs? I asked Mr. Patterson at the general store. He was weighing apples, but his hands stopped. We do finish them on Christmas Eve. But why not before? Because before isn't the right time. He resumed weighing but wouldn't look at me. Everything has its time, Mr. Webb. The carol isn't complete until everyone sings together, until everyone knows their part. And what if someone doesn't want a part? His expression shifted then, not angry, but pitying. Everyone has a part, whether they want it or not. I should have left then, should have packed my car and driven back to Philadelphia, divorce and all. But pride is a stupid thing. I wasn't going to be run out of some backwards town by creepy singing and vague warnings. The school's Christmas program was scheduled for December 20th. Parents filled the cafeteria, sitting on folding chairs beneath construction paper snowflakes. My students performed a play about reindeer, sang Rudolph and Frosty with appropriate childish enthusiasm. Normal things, comforting things. But after the program ended, as parents collected their children, Principal Dawson approached me. "You've been invited to the preparation," she said. What preparation? For Christmas Eve, the carol keeper wants to meet you. I'd heard the term before, whispered among students and mentioned in passing by adults who assumed I knew what it meant. I'm not interested in. It's not optional, Marcus. She'd never used my first name before. No one refuses the carol keeper. No one who wants to stay in Shepherd's Hollow. Then, maybe I don't want to stay. Her face went pale. Actually pale, like I'd threatened her family. Please don't say that. Please. Just come meet her. Listen, then decide. The fear in her voice was genuine enough that I agreed. They took me that night, not violently, but inevitably. Mr. Patterson drove, Mrs. Holbrook sat beside me in the back seat, and neither spoke as we wound through snow-covered streets to the old church at the edge of town. Inside, candles provided the only light. Dozens of people sat in the pews, not speaking, barely breathing, and at the front, in a wheelchair pushed against the altar, sat the oldest woman I'd ever seen. She couldn't have weighed more than 80 pounds. Her skin was translucent, showing every vein, every bone, but her eyes were bright and aware, fixing on me as I was guided down the aisle. "Marcus Webb," she said, and her voice was stronger than her body suggested. "The newcomer, the one who doesn't sing." "I sing," I said. "Just not like this. Not in worship, not in offering." She gestured with one trembling hand. "Sit. Let me tell you about Shepherd's Hollow." I sat in the front pew. Everyone watched. "This town was founded in 1743, the carol keeper began. By faithful people fleeing persecution. They came here seeking peace, seeking quiet, seeking God, and they found something else, something older, something that lived in the silence between prayers." She paused, wheezing slightly. Someone brought her water. "The first winter they nearly starved. The crops had failed, the hunting was poor, children were dying. So on Christmas Eve, they gathered in this very spot and prayed. They sang every carol they knew, begging for deliverance. And their prayers were answered." "By what?" I asked. "By something that feeds on music, on human voices raised in harmony. It heard their desperation and was pleased by it. So it made an offer. Every Christmas Eve the town would gather and sing. Every voice, every person. One complete carol cycle from sunset to dawn. And in exchange, the town would prosper. No one would starve. No one would freeze. Shepherd's Hollow would be protected." I wanted to laugh. Should have laughed. But the absolute sincerity in that church, the fear and reverence mixed in every watching face, killed the impulse. "For 280 years we've kept the bargain," the carol keeper continued. "We practice all December, learning our parts, preparing our voices, and on Christmas Eve we sing, all of us, together, from dusk until dawn. If we stop, if even one voice falls silent, the protection ends. And the thing that's kept us safe all these years will take its payment in other ways." "This is insane," I said. "Yes," she agreed. "But it's our insanity, our burden, and now, yours." I didn't agree to anything. "You came here, you took employment, you ate our food and slept under our roofs. The town has accepted you, Marcus Webb, and acceptance has a price." Mrs. Holbrook touched my shoulder. "We're not monsters, we're just people trying to survive. 4 nights from now, you'll stand with us and sing, that's all, just sing." "And if I refuse?" The carol keeper's expression didn't change. "Then you'll learn what happens when the carol goes unfinished." They let me leave, drove me home in silence, and left me at my door. I sat in my dark living room, listening to the midnight singing that drifted through the town, and tried to convince myself I could still leave. But my car wouldn't start the next morning. "Dead battery," Patterson said when he came to look at it. He'd order a new one, but it wouldn't arrive until after Christmas. My phone lost signal, the internet went out. I was trapped not by force, but by 1,000 small failures that felt coordinated. The singing intensified. Morning, noon, evening, and night. I heard it in my sleep, felt it vibrating in my teeth. My students sang in perfect harmony during recess. Mrs. Holbrook sang while hanging laundry in the snow. Even the teenagers working at the diner sang while taking orders. I tried to resist. Locked myself in my house, stuffed cotton in my ears, played white noise through my laptop's dying battery. But the melodies found me anyway, worming through walls and windows and the spaces between my thoughts. On December 23rd, I woke to find my front door open. I hadn't opened it, the lock was still engaged. But there it stood, gaping onto the snow-covered street. and in the distance I could see people emerging from their homes, moving toward the church. I followed, not because I wanted to, but because my legs moved without consulting my brain. Inside the church, everyone was gathering, every citizen of Shepherd's Hollow, arranged in precise positions marked on the floor with tape and chalk. The carol keeper sat at the altar, watching with those bright, consuming eyes. "Your place is there," Mrs. Holbrook said, pointing to a spot near the back. "Bass section. Your voice will support the foundation." "How do you know my voice?" She just smiled sadly. "We've been listening, Marcus. We always listen." I should have run. But where? The snow was 3 feet deep outside, my car didn't work, and every face in that church was watching me with the same mixture of pity and inevitability. I took my place. "Tomorrow night," the carol keeper announced, "we sing the full cycle, 14 carols, repeated until dawn. Some of you will feel faint, some of you will want to stop, but you must continue. You must maintain your part. Because if the carol breaks, if even one voice falls silent..." She didn't finish, didn't need to. We practiced through the day. They brought food and water, allowed brief bathroom breaks, but otherwise we stood and sang. My throat grew raw, my legs ached. But around me, people twice my age maintained their positions, their voices never wavering. I began to hear it then, beneath our singing, woven through the harmonies. Something else. Not a voice, but a listening. A vast, patient attention focused on our music, like a cat watching a mouse hole. It was real. The thing the carol keeper had described was actually real, and it was hungry. Night fell. Christmas Eve arrived, and as the sun touched the horizon, the carol keeper raised her trembling hand. "Begin," she whispered. We sang, "O come, all ye faithful, joyful and triumphant." Our voices rose together, 847 people creating a sound that rattled the church windows and seemed to sink into the earth itself. And I felt it respond. Felt something vast and ancient stir beneath Shepherd's Hollow, pleased by our offering. We sang through the night. My voice became mechanical, automated. People wept while singing. Children's eyes glazed. But no one stopped. No one could stop. Around 3 a.m., I understood. This wasn't protection. This was feeding. The town had made a deal with something that consumed human worship, that grew fat on voiced devotion. We weren't being protected, we were livestock, kept alive only to continue producing the sustenance it craved. But understanding changed nothing. My voice continued. My part in the carol never faltered. Dawn came eventually. The final verse of the final repetition faded, and in the silence that followed, I felt it withdraw. Satisfied, sated, sleeping again until next December. People collapsed. Some laughed, some cried. The carol keeper slumped in her wheelchair, barely conscious. "Well done," she breathed. "Another year earned." I walked out into Christmas morning. The snow was pristine. The sun was bright. Somewhere children were opening presents. And I knew I would never leave Shepherd's Hollow. Knew that next December I would take my place again. Would sing until my throat bled and my legs gave out. Because the alternative was worse. Because everyone has a part. And mine was to sing. My name is Diana Marsh, and I learned too late that some traditions should die. I came to Millbrook Falls as part of a folklore documentation project. My doctorate focused on regional Christmas customs, and this particular town had popped up in several academic papers. Every December since 1952, the citizens conducted what they called the snowman census, building exactly 200 snowmen throughout the town, no more, no fewer, and maintaining them until December 26th. It seemed quaint, perfect dissertation material. I arrived on December 1st with my camera, my recording equipment, and my complete ignorance about what I was walking into. The town was beautiful in that way. Small mountain towns are, alpine architecture, smoking chimneys, everything picturesque enough to be a postcard. Population 843, according to the welcome sign. I'd rented a room above the local bookstore, and the owner, a woman named Grace Tillman, seemed delighted to have a researcher in residence. "You'll want to document the building ceremony," she said, carrying my bags upstairs. "First Saturday of December, everyone participates." "How did the tradition start?" Her smile faltered slightly. "There was an incident back in '52. The town decided we needed a memorial, something to count what was lost." "What was lost?" "Children." She set down my bags and wouldn't meet my eyes. There was a blizzard, a bad one. Some children went missing. When they were found, she trailed off. Well, that's when we started the census. The building ceremony was scheduled for that Saturday. I spent the week interviewing residents, and everyone spoke about the snowman census with a strange mixture of pride and anxiety. They used specific phrases repeatedly: maintaining the count, ensuring accuracy, keeping them standing. What happens if one falls down? I asked Grace over coffee. We rebuild it immediately. But what if you can't? What if it melts? She looked at me like I'd suggested burning down the church. They don't melt. Not until December 26th. But that's impossible. Temperature fluctuations, sunny days. They don't melt. Her voice was flat, final. Not until we let them. Saturday arrived with fresh snow. Perfect packing snow, Grace assured me. The entire town gathered in the square at dawn, divided into teams of 4. Each team would build 5 snowmen at assigned locations throughout Millbrook Falls. By sunset, all 200 would be complete. I followed Team 7, documenting their process. They built their snowmen with meticulous care, using precise measurements to ensure uniformity. 3 spheres each, stacked to exactly 6 feet tall. No decorations, no faces. Just blank white forms with branch arms reaching outward. Why no faces? I asked. Tom, the team leader, packed snow with gloved hands. Don't need faces, just need them standing. But aren't snowmen supposed to be cheerful? Coal eyes, carrot noses? These aren't for cheer, miss. He wouldn't elaborate. By evening, I'd walked the entire town, counting. Exactly 200 snowmen stood at measured intervals along streets, in yards, beside the church, near the school. They formed a perimeter of sorts, I realized. A boundary marking Millbrook Falls limits. That night, lying in bed above the bookstore, I heard footsteps. Multiple sets, crunching through snow. I looked out my window to see people checking the snowmen, flashlights bobbing in darkness, citizens touching each frozen form, ensuring they remained upright. This happened every night. Patrols, making sure the count stayed accurate. I started noticing other oddities. Children didn't play in the snow. No one built additional snowmen, even in their own yards. And the 200 census snowmen never changed. No melting, no settling, no natural degradation. 5 days after construction, in temperatures that reached 40 degrees, they stood exactly as built. Okay, what's actually going on here? I asked Grace on December 10th. This isn't normal. Those snowmen shouldn't look like that. She was ringing up a customer, waited until we were alone. You're a researcher. You came here knowing we were unusual. I came expecting quaint tradition, not whatever this is. This is survival, Diana. She locked the front door, flipped the sign to closed. Come upstairs, I'll tell you what the textbooks don't. Her apartment above the shop was cluttered with books and photographs. She poured us each bourbon and gestured to a photo on the wall, black and white, dated 1952, a group of children standing in the snow. December 20th, 1952, Grace began. Worst blizzard in recorded history for this region. Visibility 0, temperature -15, wind that could strip skin. We lost power, lost heat. The whole town was trapped in their homes, barely surviving. She took a long drink. But some children had been out when it hit. 20 kids playing in the woods. They tried to get home but got disoriented. Search parties couldn't launch until the storm broke, 3 days later. When they found the children, she showed me another photo. This one she pulled from a drawer, clearly not for display. 20 small shapes in the snow, not buried, not frozen in normal ways. They'd been transformed, Grace whispered. Still alive but changed, crystallized, more ice than flesh. They could move, could think, but they were freezing to the touch and spreading cold wherever they went, like they'd become part of the winter itself. I stared at the photograph, refusing to believe what I was seeing. That's not possible. No, it shouldn't be, but the blizzard was unnatural. Something came down from the mountain that December, something old and cold that had slept for centuries. The storm was its breath, and those children caught in it became its offspring, I suppose. Its extensions. Where are they now? That's what the snowmen are for. Grace's hands shook as she refilled her glass. We couldn't cure the children, couldn't warm them. Everything they touched froze solid. They were dying, and they were suffering, and they were dangerous. So the town made a decision. She stood, walked to the window overlooking the street where the nearest snowman stood. We contained them. built them houses of ice and snow, taught them to hold still, to stay dormant, promised them they could exist like this, preserved, neither fully alive nor fully dead. But they needed anchors, markers, ways to remember themselves. My throat was dry. The snowmen. One for each child, rebuilt every December, and 180 more for the adults who volunteered to join them over the years, people who got old, got sick, got tired of normal death. They chose to become part of the cold instead. Now they sleep in the ice beneath us, spread throughout the town's foundations. And the snowmen keep them tethered, keep them counting themselves, keep them remembering they were once human. I stood up, backing toward the door. "This is insane." "Yes," she agreed, "but it's our insanity, and it works. As long as the count is maintained, as long as all 200 markers stand, they stay dormant, stay peaceful. But if the count drops, if even one snowman falls and isn't rebuilt, what happens? They wake up confused, angry, and they come looking for their markers, come up through the ice, trying to count themselves, trying to find what's missing. And when they touch you," she traced a finger down her arm, "you freeze, from the inside out, become one of them." I left that night, packed my equipment, and walked to where I'd parked my car on the town's edge. It wouldn't start. Completely dead, and my phone had no signal. "Battery's frozen," Tom said, appearing behind me with a flashlight. "Happens to newcomers sometimes. We'll get you a replacement after Christmas." "I want to leave now." "Can't. Roads are impassable anyway. Snow's coming." He pointed to the dark sky. "Should be here by midnight. You'll want to be indoors." They were right about the snow. It came down thick and fast, accumulating with unnatural speed. I was trapped in my room above the bookstore, watching through the window as the town conducted its nightly patrols, checking snowmen in the growing storm. Around 2 a.m., I saw one fall. A gust of wind toppled snowman number 47, its blank form collapsing into component spheres. The alarm that rose from Millbrook Falls wasn't sirens, it was voices, shouting, screaming, people running through knee-deep snow toward the fallen marker. I watched them rebuild frantically, Tom and his team working with desperate speed, but they were too slow. The ground beneath snowman number 47's location bulged, then cracked, and something pulled itself up through ice and frozen earth. It had been human once. You could still see the basic shape, but it was made of ice now, translucent and beautiful and horrible. A child frozen mid-reach, eyes open and aware, mouth forming words that came out as crystalline vapor. It touched one of the rebuilders, Tom. He froze solid in 3 seconds, his scream cutting off as his lungs crystallized. More of them were rising. Not all 200, but enough. Confused shapes pulling themselves from beneath the town, reaching for their missing markers, spreading cold. I ran downstairs, found Grace huddling in the bookstore. "They're awake." "I know." She was crying. The storm delayed the rebuilders. The count dropped for too long. "What do we do?" "Survive until they go back down. They'll exhaust themselves soon, return to dormancy, but not before." She gestured helplessly toward the screaming outside. I spent that night hiding in the basement while Millbrook Falls learned again what it meant to lose the count. The frozen children wandered, searching, touching, spreading their curse. By dawn, 17 more citizens had been transformed, crystallized, added to the collection. When silence finally fell, when the frozen had returned to their sleep beneath the town, I emerged to find the survivors rebuilding. Not just the fallen snowman, but 17 more, adjusting the count to 217. "You'll stay until December 26th, Grace told me. Her left arm was crystallized now, frozen solid but somehow still functional. "After that, you can leave. Tell whatever story you want. No one will believe you anyway." She was right. I stayed. Documented, watched them maintain the new count with even more obsessive care. On December 26th, they melted the snowmen in a ceremony. All 217 dissolved back into water, releasing their anchors. Beneath the ground, the frozen slept peacefully once more, counting themselves in dreams. My car started that afternoon. My phone regained signal. The roads cleared like they'd never been blocked. I drove away from Millbrook Falls and didn't look back. But sometimes in deep winter, I wake up to find my breath fogging in my warm apartment. I touch my arm and feel it colder than it should be, and I wonder if something followed me, if I touched one of them without realizing, if I'm slowly crystallizing from the inside out, Next December, I might go back to Millbrook Falls. I might ask them to build me a snowman, number 218. Because everyone gets tired of fighting the cold, and at least they count their own. My name is Robert Chen, and I used to think the worst thing you could receive was nothing at all. Pinehurst was the kind of town people moved to for the silence. Tucked in the Cascade foothills, 200 residents, one general store, and a Christmas tradition that had existed since the town's founding in 1889, the anonymous gift exchange. Every December 23rd, citizens would draw names from a hat. You had until Christmas Eve to deliver a gift to your assigned person, left anonymously on their doorstep after dark. No names, no cards, just a present from one neighbor to another, fostering community and goodwill. Or so the brochure claimed when I bought my cabin there in October. I was there to finish my novel, third one, and the previous two hadn't sold, so this was my last chance before returning to my parents' restaurant in Portland. Pinehurst seemed perfect, isolated, quiet, no distractions. The gift exchange seemed harmless, even charming. I attended the drawing on December 23rd, held in the general store that doubled as town hall. About 40 people showed up, everyone over 18. The mayor, a rail-thin man named Whitmore, held out a leather hat. "Same rules as always," he announced. "You draw a name, you keep it secret. You deliver your gift by midnight Christmas Eve. The gift must be meaningful, personal, something that reflects your understanding of the recipient." "What if you don't know the person well?" someone asked. "Then you learn about them, you observe, you pay attention." Whitmore's smile didn't reach his eyes. "That's what neighbors do." I drew a name, Margaret Frost. I'd seen her around, a widow in her 70s who lived in the blue house near the creek. She kept to herself mostly, tended a garden even in winter, seemed kind enough when I'd nodded hello. "Don't overthink it," the woman next to me whispered. She was younger, maybe 30, with nervous eyes. "Just give something simple." "What did you give last year?" She flinched. "I'd rather not talk about it." The next day I asked around about Margaret Frost, tried to understand what would make a meaningful gift, but people got uncomfortable when I questioned them. "Just give her something from the heart," the store owner said. "Maybe something for her garden," suggested the postal worker. "Whatever you do, make it count," warned Whitmore when I ran into him getting coffee. "The exchange isn't optional, Mr. Chen. And it isn't casual." That night, I saw Margaret outside her blue house, standing in her snow-covered garden. She wasn't wearing a coat despite the temperature being well below freezing. Just stood there, staring at the dead plants, her breath fogging in the darkness. I started noticing things after that, details I'd overlooked during my first quiet weeks in Pinehurst. The nervous young woman from the drawing lived in the yellow house on Maple Street. She never opened her curtains anymore. At night, I'd see her shadow pacing, back and forth, back and forth. A middle-aged man named Doug, who'd been friendly at the drawing, started looking gaunt. Haunted, he'd check his mailbox obsessively, multiple times per hour, always appearing disappointed. And Margaret Frost kept standing in her frozen garden, night after night, like she was waiting for something to grow. December 24th arrived. I still hadn't bought a gift, kept putting it off because something felt wrong about the whole tradition. The way people spoke about it with forced cheer masking genuine anxiety. The way Whitmore had emphasized, not optional. Around 3 p.m., there was a knock at my door. Whitmore stood there with two other men I recognized from the drawing. "Evening, Mr. Chen. Just checking in on your progress." "Progress?" "With your gift. For Margaret. You are planning to deliver tonight, yes?" Yes. Of course." "Good." He didn't leave. "Because it's crucial everyone participates. The exchange works because everyone contributes. If even one person fails to deliver." He shook his head. "Well, let's not find out what happens." "Is that a threat?" "It's a warning and a kindness." He finally turned to go. "Deliver your gift, Mr. Chen, something meaningful, before midnight." They left me standing there, skin crawling. I drove to the general store, frantic now, bought gardening gloves, seed packets, a book about winter cultivation, wrapped them clumsily and drove to Margaret's blue house as evening fell. Her lights were off. I left the package on her doorstep, knocked once and retreated to my car. I should have driven home, but something made me park down the street and watch. An hour passed. Then, Margaret's door opened. She stood in the doorway, staring down at the wrapped package like it was a bomb. Then slowly she bent and picked it up, retreated inside, closed the door. I waited for lights, for some sign of gratitude or pleasure, but the house remained dark. Around 10 p.m., I saw others making deliveries, people creeping through shadows, leaving packages, fleeing quickly. No one seemed happy about it. They moved with the urgency of people paying off debts. Midnight came. I returned home, relieved it was over, but it wasn't. Christmas morning arrived cold and gray. I slept late, exhausted from the previous night's anxiety. Woke to find a package on my own doorstep. My gift. From my anonymous giver. The box was wrapped in brown paper, tied with twine. No tag, no card, just my name written in careful script. I brought it inside, made coffee, stared at it. Just open it, I told myself. It's just a gift. I unwrapped it. Inside was a manuscript. My manuscript. The novel I'd been working on for 8 months, that existed only on my password-protected laptop in my locked cabin. Every page was there. But they'd been edited. Red ink covered each sheet, correcting grammar, suggesting structural changes, noting weak characterization. Professional-level editorial notes filled the margins. At the very end, a final note. You'll never finish this. You don't have the discipline, but I wanted you to see what it could have been. My hands shook. Someone had been in my cabin, had accessed my computer, had read my most private work and judged it lacking. I called Whitmore. He answered on the first ring, like he'd been waiting. I see you received your gift, he said. Someone broke into my house. No one broke in, Mr. Chen. They were let in by you. When you drew a name, when you participated, you agreed to be known, truly known. That's what the exchange is for. This isn't normal. No, he agreed. It's far more honest than normal. Your gift is knowledge, Robert. Knowledge of how you're perceived, how you're understood. Isn't that what you wanted? To be seen? I hung up, sat there staring at the marked-up manuscript. Then I heard the screaming. It came from the yellow house on Maple Street. The nervous young woman. I ran outside, saw others emerging too, all of us drawn by the sound. Her front door was open. Inside, she sat on the floor, surrounded by photographs, hundreds of them, scattered like snow, and she was tearing them, methodically, one by one. She didn't deliver, Whitmore said behind me. Couldn't decide on a gift. Let midnight pass without participating. So her gift found her anyway. He picked up one of the photographs. It showed the young woman with a man, both smiling, happy. Every memory of her ex-husband, every photo, every letter, every memento she'd hidden away, trying to forget him. Her anonymous giver collected them all, reminded her of exactly what she'd lost. That's cruel. That's honest. Whitmore dropped the photo. We know each other here, Mr. Chen, really know each other, our fears, our shames, our secrets, and once a year we prove it. We give gifts that show we're paying attention. That no one is invisible. That everyone is seen. More screaming started throughout Pinehurst. I wandered through town in a daze, watching people open their gifts. Doug, the gaunt man, received a box of his own teeth, the ones he'd lost to meth addiction 20 years ago, before getting clean. Remember what you were, the attached note said. Remember what you could return to. Margaret Frost received my seeds and gloves and book, but her real gift arrived at noon. A dead rosebush, dug from somewhere, its roots still clinging to frozen earth. Your daughter's favorite, the note read. Margaret collapsed, sobbing, clutching the dead plant. I learned later her daughter had died in a car accident 10 years ago. Had loved roses. Margaret had been unable to grow them since. Every gift was like that. Personal, cutting, designed to wound precisely because it showed accurate understanding. Why? I asked Whitmore that evening, finding him at the store. Why do this? This isn't community. This is torture. It's both, he said. Pinehurst was dying, Mr. Chen. Decades ago, people stopped knowing their neighbors, stopped caring, stopped paying attention. So the founders' descendants created the exchange. A tradition that forced intimacy, forced us to observe, to learn, to understand each other completely. By weaponizing that understanding, by making it matter, by making every person in Pinehurst significant enough to be truly known. He smiled that empty smile. You're a writer, you should appreciate it. What's more valuable than being understood, even if that understanding hurts? I left Pinehurst on December 26th, packed everything, abandoned my lease, drove back to Portland, but the manuscript came with me. Those red ink notes, that final cutting assessment. And the worst part? They were right. Every suggestion improved the novel. Every criticism was accurate. Someone in Pinehurst had understood my work better than I understood it myself. I finished the novel using those notes. It sold, got published, got positive reviews, and every word felt like a betrayal of something, though I couldn't name what. Last week I received a letter, no return address, inside a single sentence. Your gift for next year is ready. Please return by December 23rd to receive it. I don't know what they've learned about me since I left, what they've observed, what private piece of myself they've excavated and polished into a gift. But I'm going back. Because Whitmore was right. Being truly known, even when it destroys you, is better than being invisible. And I need to understand who I'm becoming, even if it kills me. My name is Daniel Porter, and I learned that some forests are harvested, and some forests harvest back. I bought Porter's Pine Farm in October, using the last of my savings after my landscaping business went under in Phoenix. The farm was cheap, 40 acres of evergreens in the mountains of Vermont, complete with a small house, a barn, and equipment. The previous owner, a man named Aldrich, had died suddenly. No family. The estate sold everything as is. I thought it was a fresh start. Thought I'd run a Christmas tree farm, make a modest living, rebuild my life. I was wrong about everything. The first thing I noticed was the trees themselves, perfectly uniform, hundreds of them, maybe thousands, standing in exact rows. Douglas firs, noble firs, blue spruces, all healthy, all at sellable height. It was remarkably well maintained for a farm whose owner had been dead 6 months. They take care of themselves, said Mrs. Henley, the neighbor who'd agreed to show me around. She was 60-something, bundled against the October cold. Aldrich had a gift, hardly had to do anything. The trees just grew right. No irrigation system? None needed. The soil's good. Real good. She showed me the barn, the equipment, the tagging system Aldrich had used. Customers would arrive in December, walk the farm, select their tree, and Aldrich would cut it fresh. Simple. Traditional. One rule, Mrs. Henley said as we finished the tour. Don't cut from the back 40. The what? The oldest section, deep in. Aldrich was particular about those, said they weren't for sale. Why not? If they're mature, they're worth more. Just don't. Her expression closed. Aldrich had his reasons. You'd be smart to respect them. I let it go. 40 acres was more than enough without worrying about one restricted section. November passed quietly. I cleaned the house, repaired equipment, studied tree farming, set up a simple website advertising fresh-cut Christmas trees starting December 1st. But at night, I'd hear movement outside, rustling, branches creaking. At first, I assumed it was wind or animals, but the sounds were too rhythmic, too purposeful. One night, I looked out the bedroom window and saw the trees moving, not swaying, moving, their needled branches reaching, flexing, like arms stretching after sleep. I convinced myself it was shadows, exhaustion, the strangeness of living alone in a forest. December arrived. My first customers came on the 1st, a young couple from Burlington looking for a 7-foot Douglas fir. I walked them through the rows, let them choose, cut their selection, and strapped it to their car roof. Beautiful farm, the woman said. Aldrich ran this for years, right? I bought it from his estate. Shame what happened to him, finding him out there like that. Out where? She glanced at her husband. In the back 40. That's what we heard. He went into the old section one morning and never came back. They found him 3 days later, frozen solid, standing upright, like he'd taken root. They drove away, leaving me cold despite my layers. I went to Mrs. Henley that evening. Tell me about Aldrich. She was making tea. Didn't turn around. What do you want to know? How he died, where he died, why everyone's so uncomfortable talking about it. Because it's complicated, Daniel, and because you own the farm now, you need to live there. Better you don't know everything. That's not fair. She finally faced me. Aldrich bought that farm in 1981, 40 acres of wild forest, nothing planted, nothing managed. He cleared land, planted saplings, built the business from scratch. Took years. Hard years. Trees wouldn't grow right initially. Soil was bad, drainage was bad. He nearly went bankrupt. What changed? December 1986. He was desperate, told me he'd gone into the oldest part of the forest, the back 40, and made a deal. A deal with who? Not who. What? She poured tea with shaking hands. There's something old in that forest, Daniel. Been there since before humans. It sleeps most of the year, but it wakes in winter, and it's hungry. You can't be serious. Aldrich fed it. Every December, he'd take something out to the back 40, offerings, animals at first, then other things. And in exchange, his farm prospered. Trees grew perfect. Customers came. He made money. For 40 years, the deal held. Until last December. He'd gotten old, tired, decided he'd given enough. Tried to sell the farm without telling buyers about the arrangement. But you can't break deals like that. The forest came for its payment. I left without drinking the tea, drove back to the farm in darkness, my headlights cutting through rows of perfect trees. The barn had Aldrich's records. I stayed up all night reading them, found ledgers documenting not just sales, but offerings. December 15th, 1987, 2 rabbits. December 15th, 1995, 1 deer. December 15th, 2003, livestock from neighboring farms. The entries grew vague after 2010, just dates and check marks, no details about what was offered. The last entry was December 14th, 2023, a single word: refused. Aldrich had refused the offering, and on December 15th, he'd died. I should have left. Should have abandoned the farm, let the bank repossess it, returned to Arizona. But customers kept coming. Families who'd visited for years expecting Porter's Pine Farm to be open. And the trees were beautiful, sellable, profitable. I convinced myself Mrs. Henley was superstitious, that Aldrich had died of exposure or a medical emergency, that forests didn't make deals. On December 14th, I woke to find all my tools missing from the barn: saws, axes, cutting equipment, searched everywhere, found them arranged in the field, pointing toward the back 40, a path of tools leading deep into the restricted section. That night, the sounds outside were louder, branches scraping against walls, roots creaking beneath frozen ground, and voices whispering, using words I didn't recognize in languages that sounded like wind through needles. On December 15th, I found the sheep. Someone had left 6 sheep in my barn. No note, no explanation, just livestock that hadn't been there the night before. I knew what they were for, what I was supposed to do. I called Mrs. Henley. The sheep. You left them. The town left them. We take turns providing the offering when the farm's between owners. But you own it now, Daniel. Your responsibility. I'm not killing sheep for some imaginary forest entity. Then you'll become the offering yourself. Her voice was flat, matter of fact. That's how it works. The forest gets its payment, one way or another. I hung up, sat in the barn, staring at the sheep, trying to decide if I was living in a nightmare or just going insane. Around noon, a family arrived to buy a tree. I sold them a blue spruce, forced myself to smile, acted normal, but after they left I noticed something. The tree I'd cut was bleeding, not sap, blood, real blood, seeping from the stump, dark and viscous. I checked other stumps, all bleeding. The entire farm was weeping. I drove to town, confronted Mrs. Henley in her home. What the hell is happening? The forest is reminding you, December 15th is payment day. Always has been, since Aldrich made his deal, since whoever owned the land before him, probably since the first humans settled here. The forest is old, Daniel. Old and patient. But it expects its due. This is insane. Then leave. Drive away. Let the farm go. And then what? It comes for someone else? Eventually, but not you. You'd be free. I drove back as evening fell. The trees had moved closer to the house. I was sure of it. The nearest row, which had been 20 feet from my porch that morning, now stood 10 feet away. Inside, I locked every door and window, sat in the living room with the lights on, the sheep huddled in the barn outside. At midnight, I heard cutting, the sound of a saw biting through wood. I looked outside. The trees were harvesting themselves. The ones closest to the house were falling, cut through at the base by invisible tools. But they weren't dying. They were crawling, dragging themselves forward on their branches, inching toward my door. I ran to the barn, threw open the doors. The sheep scattered, terrified. "Fine," I screamed at the forest. "Fine. You want payment? Take them." The trees stopped moving. The sheep ran into the darkness toward the back 40, bleeding. Silence fell. I collapsed in the barn doorway, shaking, listening, heard nothing for long minutes. Then came sounds I can't describe. Wet, crunching, the forest feeding. It lasted an hour. When it finally stopped, the trees were back in their original positions. The bleeding stumps had sealed. Everything looked normal. I went inside, threw up, and didn't sleep. The next morning, customers arrived as usual, bought trees, complimented the farm, asked if I'd be open next year. Yes, I said. Same time, same place. Because what else could I say? It's December 24th now. The season's almost over. I've made good money. The farm is successful. Next week I'll close until next December. I'll spend the year maintaining the property, managing the trees, living with what I've become. Mrs. Henley brought me a ledger yesterday. Aldrich's final gift, she said. Instructions, contacts, how to source next year's offering efficiently. The ledger is on my kitchen table. I haven't opened it yet, but I will. Because Porter's Pine Farm needs to stay in business, because the forest expects its annual payment, because I'm the owner now, and some responsibilities can't be abandoned. My name is Daniel Porter. I run a Christmas tree farm, and every December 15th, I feed the forest. I tell myself it's just livestock, just animals, just an old superstition I'm humoring, but late at night when I hear the trees whispering, I wonder what I'll do when the forest decides sheep aren't enough. When it demands something that bleeds and screams and begs. When it decides the farmer would taste better than his offering. I wonder, but I don't leave. Because the alternative is becoming the offering myself, and I'm not ready to take root. Not yet. And those were 4 small-town Christmas horror stories. Proof that even the quietest nights, filled with lights and traditions, can hide something far darker beneath the snow. If these stories put a chill in your holiday spirit, subscribe to Dark Hours for more true horror, unsettling small-town tales, and stories meant to be heard after dark, even during the season of cheer. And tell me in the comments, which story disturbed you the most? Until next time, keep the lights glowing, the doors locked. And remember, not everything watching you at Christmas comes down the chimney.